You're 2 years in, maybe 3, and you're already exhausted. You thought the hard part was over. You thought saying I do meant you'd figured it out. But you wake up next to someone who feels like a stranger, and the weight of forever crushes your chest before you even get out of bed. Your friends are posting anniversary photos, smiling, calling each other my person, and you're sitting there wondering what's wrong with you. Why does this feel so hard already? Why does commitment feel like a prison sentence instead of a partnership? Why are you Googling, is it normal to regret getting married at 2 in the morning and then deleting your search history? The wedding was beautiful. Everyone said you were perfect together, and now, less than 1,000 days later, you're wondering if you made the biggest mistake of your life. You tell yourself it's just an adjustment. Marriage is work, right? Everyone says that, but there's a difference between work and suffering, and you're starting to realize you might be on the wrong side of that line. You thought you knew them. You dated for years, maybe even lived together. But marriage changed something. It's like the moment you signed that paper, the pressure became unbearable. Suddenly everything matters more. Every fight feels catastrophic because this is supposed to be forever. Every disappointment stacks on top of the last one, and you're only just beginning. You catch yourself thinking about your single friends with envy, not because you want to date around, because they have freedom. They can make decisions without consulting anyone. They can be themselves without compromise. And you feel terrible for thinking that because you chose this. You stood up in front of everyone and chose this, but did you, or did you just follow the script? Dating, engagement, wedding, marriage. You hit all the checkpoints. Everyone was so happy for you. Your family loved them. It made sense on paper. And maybe, if you're really honest, you got swept up in the momentum. The ring, the planning, the attention, the validation of being chosen. You mistook the excitement of a wedding for readiness for a marriage. Now you're living with the consequences of a decision you made when you were someone else. A younger, more naive version of you who thought love was enough, who thought if you just wanted it badly enough it would work. You're fighting about things that shouldn't matter. Who does the dishes? Whose family you visit for the holidays? Money, time, space. Everything becomes a negotiation. And you're losing yourself in the compromise. You're becoming someone you don't recognize, and you resent them for it, even though they're probably feeling the same way. The intimacy is gone. Sex feels obligatory when it happens at all. Your roommates who share a bed. Your business partners managing a household, but you're not lovers. You're not friends. You're just ... stuck. You wonder if you should have waited, if you should have lived more life before tying yourself down. If you should have paid attention to those small red flags you explained away because you were in love, or thought you were. A part of you wants to fix this, wants to fight for it. You made a commitment. You said vows. You can't just give up because it's hard. But another part of you, the part that's being honest, knows this isn't just hard, this is wrong. And that terrifies you because what do you do with that? You're married. You're supposed to make it work. But what if you can't? What if this was a mistake from the start, and you're only now allowing yourself to see it? What you're experiencing isn't failure. It's the collision between expectation and reality, and it happens to millions of couples. Early marriage failure isn't about not trying hard enough. It's about fundamental misunderstandings of what marriage actually is and why people get married. Most people don't get married because they've found the right person. They get married because they've reached the right age. There's a window, usually late 20s to early 30s, where the social pressure to be married becomes overwhelming. Your friends are getting engaged. Your family is asking questions. You're seeing timelines tick down, especially if you want children. And in that pressure cooker, you make a decision based on timing, not truth. This is what psychologists call social scripting. You're following a predetermined path that society laid out. Graduate, career, relationship, marriage, house, kids. Each step validates the previous one. And marriage is the big validation. It says you're adult, you're successful, you're chosen, you're on track. The wedding becomes the goal, not the marriage. You're so focused on the event that you don't truly consider the lifetime that follows. Then you get married, and reality sets in. The person you married isn't the person you dated. Not because they changed, but because dating and marriage are entirely different contexts. When you were dating, you showed up as your best self. You had your own apartment, your own life, your own identity. You came together for the highlights and went home to decompress separately. Marriage removes that buffer. You see each other tired, stressed, sick, angry, petty. You see the unfiltered version. And if you got married before you really knew that version, before you saw how they handled stress or conflict or disappointment, you're essentially living with a stranger. You made a lifetime commitment to the highlight reel, and now you're living the behind-the-scenes footage. There's also the issue of development. If you married young, in your early to mid-20s, you're expecting a version of yourself that's still forming to stay static. But you won't. Your brain doesn't fully develop until 25. Your values shift. Your priorities change. Who you are at 23 is not who you'll be at 28. And if you locked yourself into a marriage before you knew who you were becoming, you're trying to fit an evolving person into a fixed commitment. This is what researchers call premature commitment. You committed before you were ready, not in terms of love, but in terms of self-knowledge. You didn't know what you actually needed in a partner because you didn't know yourself yet. You thought you did. You thought wanting someone was the same as being ready to build a life with them. It's not. Then there's the fantasy versus reality gap. You had an idea of what marriage would be like: partnership, intimacy, security, happiness. But marriage doesn't create those things. It amplifies what's already there. If your communication was weak while dating, it's catastrophic in marriage. If you avoided conflict before, you're drowning in resentment now. If you weren't truly compatible, the legal commitment doesn't change that. It just makes it harder to leave. You thought marriage would complete you, or fix you, or validate you. That's what every movie, every song, every cultural message taught you. That finding the one and getting married is the happy ending. But it's not an ending, it's a beginning. And if the foundation wasn't solid, everything you build on top of it will crumble. Early marriage failure often comes down to this. You married someone because they fit the role you needed to fill, not because they were truly right for you. You needed to be married, to feel secure, to feel grown up, to please your family, to avoid being alone. And they were there, and they were willing, and it seemed like the next logical step. But marriage isn't a step, it's a choice you have to keep making every single day. And if you're already exhausted from making that choice a few years in, it's because you're fighting against your own truth. The truth that maybe this wasn't right from the start. Admitting that your marriage isn't working doesn't mean you failed. It means you're paying attention. And that awareness, painful as it is, gives you power. The question isn't whether marriage is hard. It is. The question is whether it's the right kind of hard. Is it hard because you're growing together, learning to navigate differences, building something meaningful? Or is it hard because you were fundamentally incompatible and trying to force something that was never meant to be? There's a difference between a marriage worth fighting for and a marriage you're fighting to justify. If you're constantly defending your relationship to yourself, if you're listing reasons to stay that all sound like obligations rather than desires, you have your answer. You don't have to stay married just because you got married. That sounds simple, but it's the truth. People are afraid to say yes. You made a commitment, but you also committed to yourself, to your own life, to your own happiness. And staying in a marriage that's destroying you doesn't honor anything. Not your vows, not your partner, and certainly not yourself. What if the divorce rate isn't a failure rate? What if it's a clarity rate? What if all those people who left early weren't weak or impatient? What if they were brave enough to admit the truth before wasting decades living a lie? You've been taught that divorce is the worst outcome. But living in a dead marriage for 50 years, is that success? Staying together out of fear or shame or obligation while your soul slowly suffocates, is that the goal? The path forward requires brutal honesty, not anger, not blame, but truth. Can this marriage become what you both need? Not with more date nights or couples therapy or trying harder. Can it fundamentally, with the two people you actually are, become a source of life instead of drain? If the answer is no, or if you don't know, you owe it to yourself to find out. And finding out might mean separation. It might mean space. It might mean acknowledging that you made a mistake and having the courage to correct it. You're not obligated to stay in a wrong decision just because you made it publicly. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to outgrow something. You're allowed to choose yourself. And if the answer is yes, if there's something real worth fighting for underneath all the disappointment and pressure, then fight for it with your eyes open. Not fighting to stay married, but fighting to build something authentic. Either way, you deserve a life that doesn't feel like a slow death. Whether that's inside this marriage or outside of it, only you know. But you do know, underneath all the noise and the fear and the shame, you know, the success of a marriage isn't measured by its length. It's measured by whether it allows you to become more yourself, not less. You're not trapped, you're just scared, and that's okay. But don't let fear make your decisions for you. If these words found you at the right time, if they gave you something you needed, this is what we do here. Real conversations about the parts of relationships no one else wants to say out loud. Subscribe to keep going deeper. You don't have to figure this out alone.